So, I haven't done a video in a while, but I decided to do one this morning. As you can see, I've got the server set up here on my new desk, which YouTube might not have seen yet, I'm not entirely sure. I've currently got two X5450s installed. No, they're X5460s, I lied. They're 3.166 GHz stock. They're the second fastest 771 Xeon, which is compatible with my server. Now, I don't know whether you can see because it's quite small on the phone, but I've got the temperature monitor open in Cinebench. So I'm just going to do a quick Cinebench run so you can see what 8 cores and 8 threads looks like. Right, okay, here we go. I'll bring you in for a close-up of the temperatures as well after it's done. Now, this system is about as fast as a 5 GHz 2500K, which is quite fast, but obviously you've got the extra threads. This has got 32 gigs of RAM as well, 24 of which I can use as a RAM disk if I actually want to do something quite fast, have exceptionally good read and write times on the storage. I mean, a 2500K is much more practical if you were gaming or something, but if you need 8 threads for some reason, this is a better option. You also have to remember that the 2500K and motherboard will probably cost more than this entire machine, so it's nearly done there. Now I'll bring you in for a bit of a closer look. Take off the tripod. There you go, 666. As you can see, the CPU temps didn't go above 68, which is really impressive considering the fan speeds didn't really ramp up at all there. I'll just stick you back in the tripod. There you go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open CPU-Z actually. So here, as you can see, I haven't got it running in performance mode with the C states off at the moment, so it does throttle down to 2 GHz when it's not being used, and obviously I've got 2 processors. Obviously they're both the exact same processor, both the E0 stepping, which are better for overclocking, but unfortunately SetFSB doesn't work with this motherboard and this chipset. So you can see there, yeah, I have loads of cache. I have effectively 12 megabytes of level 2 cache between the 2 CPUs, which is another thing that you'd have an advantage of over like an i5 or a 2500K. That's just the motherboard. You can see I've got 32 gigabytes of RAM, which is loads for DDR2, and this FB, the fully buffered DDR2, is actually quite cheap as well. It's not the fastest RAM ever, it's actually really slow, but it works. And you can see there I've got all 8 slots filled. I actually got a couple of different kits in here, but they all work together perfectly fine. They're all Hyundai Electronics, 333 MHz with 55515 on the timings. I've got my 8400 GS in still, which is meaning I can do this monitor in full 1080p right now, which is quite nice. Got the old version of CPU-Z, so I can't do a CPU-Z benchmark for you, but I will do 11.5. Stick this on the tripod again. Focus. There we go. This is actually my server in its fastest configuration. I don't know if you remember, but originally I only had one 2 GHz processor in here, and that is much slower. I've actually bought 2 of those as well, so I will show you the performance of those so you can compare. Now it's getting to the end of this now. 7.59 points, which is a pretty respectable score in my opinion. I'll bring you in for a closer look. The score chart here. I'll actually make this full screen a second. Right, so as you can see, it's sort of around where the 2550K was. It's not quite fast as a stock i7 3770K, but it's faster than i7 960 by quite a bit, which is really good. You can see the specs there. I'm now going to reboot it in performance mode, and I might show you a bit of the BIOS as well. I don't know whether I've shown that before in a video, but I'll do that now. So here we are in the BIOS of this lovely HP server. For options, it's got a load of servery kind of options. This is the option I use here, the power regulation option. This controls the VRM, so it turns the VRM dynamically on and off, just like a gaming motherboard would. So you've got the power saving mode, which will switch between the high performance and the low power mode, depending on how much load you're putting on the server, whether it's using one processor or just 2. And you've got your low power mode, which will try and throttle the CPUs as much as possible unless they're under really high load for a really long time. Then you've got your high performance mode, which is the one I tend to use, where it just puts the CPUs flat out all the time using the full VRM. Now, to disable C states on this board, I'll have to look through the menus because I'm not entirely sure where it is. Not that one. Not that one. Yeah, I think it's in advanced options to be fair, but you can see all the things here in the BIOS, utility language. Here we go. Right then, processor options down here. Hardware prefetcher, disable, enable, whether you want that or not. Virtualization, I always disable that, pointless having that for me. Disable C states, and you can also disable half of the processor cores per processor, so if you want, you can have 2 CPUs with 2 cores and 2 threads each if you want to save power or something. I don't know. There is, I think, Intel Speed Step in one of these menus as well. I'm not sure where that is. So now we're here back in Windows, so if I open CPU Z, should show the CPUs at full speed. Ah, there you go. I'll bring you in for a closer look here. So as you can see now, the CPUs are always at 3.166 GHz, and that's both CPUs. Still, everything else will be the same. Now, if we open Cinebench again, I'm going to do another run. And we'll make it exactly the same as last time and have core temp open at the side as well. Now it does run a bit hotter when you run it like this. In performance mode it tends to idle at about 50 degrees opposed to like 30 to 40 degrees, and it will get into the high 70s or low 80 degrees on one of the processors. The other one tends to stay a bit cooler. So as you can see, those 8 threads pushing round this benchmark with great speed. I mean, it's nothing compared to like a modern dual Xeon rig, but I mean at the time this would have been, these CPUs were like I think $850 or $1,000 each, and well, now you can pick them up for 25, 30. So it's pretty crazy really. So as you can see, we didn't really get much of a performance increase. We got 668 and the temperatures were a fair bit higher, and you can see the idle temperatures, like the current temperatures, are a lot higher as well when it's in this mode. Now this is a very clean OS that I'm running as well, you have to remember. It's only really got Cinebench and a few other things installed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and max out the performance. I'm going to close my audio driver, close Explorer because we don't need that. We're going to run it in real-time priority, so it's actually going to freeze. I'm going to untick those. I'm going to put it all the way in the corner, and this isn't going to be very exciting for anyone. And we will now run all selected tests. Now as you can see, when I was last using this server, I was actually using it for the Country Cup. There was, oh that's it, Geekbench with FB DIMMs, because one of the challenges was to do you had to do Geekbench, and you had to use I think 5 different types of memory. So you had DDR4, DDR3, DDR2, but FB DDR2 is different because the pin count is different, so it's a different class of memory. So instead of using DDR1, you could use DDR2 FB, which obviously gives you much higher performance than a DDR1 system is, especially on Geekbench, because on this system I'm running dual CPUs. Now unfortunately my score wasn't amazing. I think it's finished. There we go, it has finished indeed. And as you can see, we have gained another few points there by doing my little tweaks. Let's have a look where that is now. You can see on this scoreboard here, that is actually not my highest score I've ever got, but that's pretty decent. So yeah, I'll just put it back on the tripod. I'll actually run Geekbench for you as well, because well, it gets pretty decent Geekbench scores, to be honest. It's a lot better than it was stock. There we go. Hopefully it's still installed. Oh. I may need to plug in an Ethernet cable. That would help. Or I could just activate my Geekbench license. The only problem is this PC has 3 Ethernet ports, and I've no idea which drivers I have installed, if any. So, not that one clearly. Nick 1. That may be the best option. It's loading. Aha. Well, there we go. We can now internet. Let's have a look. May need to reinstall this, 1 second. Right. I have now reinstalled and unlocked my Geekbench, because I do have a license key for it and I've just had to put it in, so I can now run 64-bit. This is actually a good opportunity to show you the difference between running 64-bit and 32-bit on Geekbench. So what I'll do is I'll go into Explorer, there we go, close that, make Geekbench to a real time. So we're going to run it in 32-bit first, run benchmarks, and off it goes. So there we go. That is a little bit under my best score, which I've got on 32-bit. So that's 11,120. Right, I'm now going to run the 64-bit version of the benchmark. I'll actually put this full screen for a second so you can see. You can see it's detected both Xeons, so it is using both processors and all the memory as well. If anyone's interested, there are the different tests. As you can see, there's a lot of single core tests as well as multi-core tests, which is why i5s tend to do a lot better at this benchmark than these dual Xeons would. I'll have a quick scroll through. If you want to pause it, you can pause it. The other thing that an i5 had advantage of over this system would be the memory speed. Obviously, all these memory benchmarks down here will be quite slow. Now, if I run the 64-bit version, in theory we should get a higher score. So, as you can see, we got a fairly decent performance boost from that there. It's not incredible. It's mainly affected our single thread score actually, but it has also given us a little increase on the multi-core score. I'll scroll through the scores again so you can see. So as you can see on Geekbench, they do run a very, very high number of tests, testing the integer, so the maths performance of the CPU, floating points of the CPU, and the memory as well. If you want to pause this at any point to see a specific test, then you can do, obviously. So I think that's that for that. There we go. So I think that's about all I'm going to show you with these processors in. I'll probably do a bit more. I'll stick the other processors in. I'll come and show you the inside of the case now as well, and I'll swap out the processors for you. Yeah. So then, obviously it's much quieter now because the server's not on. So to open it up, same as last time, pull the latch, lift this straight up and off. And there you can see all the internals, which are very full now. We've got both processors in, 2 heat sinks. I think that was the new one that I got off eBay. It was about 10 quid. 32 gigabytes of RAM, sound card there, graphics card there, single PSU, RAID cards underneath over here, this plastic cover. As you can see, plenty of these little fans to blow all the air through, and with all of this memory and these 2 CPUs, it actually gets really, really hot. These memory modules here are quite toasty, I have to admit. So, to take the heat sinks out, it is exceptionally simple. All we do is move this little plastic cover here, like that, and then it's 2 retention clips, a bit like a CPU socket on the modern platforms. So you just push on these levers, and yeah, they fold back like that, and then you can take the heatsink off. Now, as you can see, I've used Thermal Grizzly on this because I wanted maximum performance and best temperatures on these X5450s, or X5460s rather, because they are very powerful CPUs. I think the 2 GHz one, which I had in originally, only 80 watts, and these are 125. So I will swap out the CPUs now. I actually need to get the other 2 CPUs because I haven't prepared anything. I actually need to take this cover off as well. There we go. And I'm trying to do this around the camera tripod as well, which isn't very fun. I don't know whether I mentioned this before as well, but the heat sinks have like 3 little flat heat pipes in them, which you can see just in the end of there, a bit like a laptop. But quite a decent fin array. They're very dense, and they've got these little plates on top so that the air's funneled all the way to the back. The CPU sockets work the exact same way as 775 sockets do. So all you have to do is just lift the retention arm like that, and then flip that up. I could actually put dual cores in here as well, because I've got 5 3 GHz, I think they're 3150s, are they? I don't know. Maybe 5150s, that's it, 5150s. So I'll get the new CPUs, or the other CPUs, the slower ones, and put them in here. 1 second. Right, now that I've actually got organised and got everything ready, we have the 2 chips which I'll be putting in, which is the original CPU, which is a 5405, and also a new one, which I got from either South Korea or China, not sure which. It was about £10–15. Anyway, the sockets are actually a different way around. As you can see, that one opens that way, and the second one opens that way. The processors are labelled on the motherboard, so if you're only using 1 CPU, use this socket. If you're using 2, obviously use both. Right, so first CPU to come out, that one. As you can see, say focus, say 5460, very high speed CPU. Now, these do have notches on, and they do also have the little triangle somewhere, not sure where, and I've got thermal paste in the socket as well, which is genius. but not anymore. That one goes in that way around. It's actually only got one of the little notches. Oh fuck's sake, I didn't refocus. It's actually only got one of the little notches on this side. It hasn't got one on that side, which is weird. Second one. I'll try not to get thermal paste in the socket this time. I'll try and put the right CPU in as well. Not the right CPU. That one is the right CPU. And again, there's only one notch on these server sockets for some reason. So just put that one in there. And that's it. Close retention arms. Thermal paste on she goes. Just putting the white stuff on these because they're not as powerful, so it's cheaper. We like cheaper. Right, heat sinks back on. I've already cleaned them up a little bit. So which way to go on? I can't remember. Anyway, I don't think it matters. There's two little holes there and there, which line up with these little pip things that are there and there, and all you really have to do is put it on like that, and then put the retention arms down and just clip them under like that, and the thermal paste will spread by itself, hopefully. This one goes that way around. Now, the reason why one CPU, well, I have a theory as to why one CPU runs much hotter than the other, is because on the actual core of these chips underneath the lids, the core isn't a little square, it's actually a rectangle shape underneath the IHS. And when the heat pipes are going this way across it, only the centre heat pipe will be touching and the other two will be either side of the core. Whereas the one with the heat pipes going this way, all three heat pipes will be laying across that core. So I think that's why one of the CPUs runs a lot cooler than the other, because the sockets on this motherboard aren't orientated the same way. So if HP wanted to have better cooling performance on a system like this, not that it actually needs it because the fans just run at 1,000 million RPM, then that's what they would do. So putting it back together, simple. It's a HP server. Any servers, they're all toolless pretty much, and if they're not, then the tool is actually in the case, which you can't see. Oh god, this is a fail. There's a little Allen key thing here, which is actually just over there. Right, take these CPUs away. Then put the lid back on, and that is it. Actually, it tells you how to do this all on the lid. There's some more instructions up there which you can't see, but this is the inside of the lid. And to put it back on, well, I don't really need to show you this. It's best if you don't get your cables trapped in the that generally helps as well. Just push that down till it clicks fully in. There's supposed to be a screw that goes in there as well, but quite frankly, ain't nobody got time to be taking screws in and out of servers, especially when making videos. Right, we shall now boot back up again. I'll see you in Windows. So we are back in Windows with the 2 GHz processors. Now I've already gone into the BIOS and changed all the performance settings and C states, so in theory it should be running at 2 GHz all the time, and it is 1.999996 or 2.00018. As you can see, it's flashing between them. Obviously it's not going to do it while I'm filming because, well, you know, these things are just like that. Still, all the same cache, same board, same memory, everything else is the same. Now, temperature wise, we are looking at 50 degrees idling, not too bad. The other faster CPUs were idling at like 55 to 60 degrees, which isn't brilliant, but whatever. We'll run Cinebench again so you can see how much slower they are. I'm doing this the wrong way around. I should have totally done these slow ones first, because you're now going to click off the video and get bored. So, oh my god, and now I've messed up the tripod, which is genius. There we go. Anyway, I should have run these first really in the video because it would have been a bit more logical. But I didn't, so you're getting the slower CPU second. Now, as you can see, they're a lot slower. That's very surprising, that is. The other CPUs, same architecture, everything is the same, and they're literally just like 55% faster, maybe a little bit less. So I'll probably just put some music over this. Oh my god, get the camera positioned better so that the screen doesn't look really washed out. Terrible. There we go. Much better. There you go, 435. Temperatures pretty much the same as idle. Barely get warm. Fans will never spin up with these CPUs in, because they're meant to be mashed together in a rack of like 1,000 of them, so yeah. So then, I think that about concludes this video at the end. So the final Geekbench scores for your comparison I've just written on the amazing notepad here. So you can see the score difference between the 5405s at 2 GHz and the X5460s at 3.166 GHz in both 64-bit and 32-bit in Geekbench. So I think that is about it for this video. Have a great day, and do some benching. Go on the Linus Tech Tips forum, preferably the Cinebench or Valley thread. submit lots of scores to hardware bot, not XTU scores though. Goodbye.